Showtime! The Capital G show starts right now.
What's up YouTube, Capital G here, and we're talking about the lifeblood of Yu-Gi-Oh! The real MVPs, that's right, the archetypes. They're not just one of the driving forces behind the competitive meta, but they're one of the biggest reasons that Yu-Gi-Oh! Stays interesting throughout the years. So today we're breaking down the best of the best in a video I'm going to call another top 10 archetypes of all time, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Hierarchy. We'll be ranking these archetypes based on their impact on the competitive meta, artwork, lore if applicable, and then of course fanfare. Now just for reference, as this is the second video that we've made on this topic, we will be excluding archetypes that we already covered in the first video. This would include the following archetypes: Harpies, Yugioh, Dark World, Fire Fist, Mermail, Blackwing, Six Samurais, Lightsworn, Gladiator Beasts, and then of course Elemental Heroes. With all that said, let us begin the list. Number 10, Burning Abyss. We're kicking off our list with an archetype that brought a bit of sophistication to our game. Based on the fantastic Divine Comedy poem, the Burning Abyss archetype is actually one that tells a story of a courageous hero and his epic travels through the abyss, purgatory, paradise, everything in between, and of course the colorful cast of characters that he meets along the way. Burning Abyss is also arguably the greatest TCG archetype ever to be created, and it definitely demanded a spot on this list. Number 9, Serteller Knights. Join the ranks of a band of fearless galactic warriors who live to fight evil in the darkness. Serteller Knights are not only a fan favorite, but one of the most successful decks since the release of Duelist Alliance. They've also had possibly the greatest collection of Xyz monsters as an archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh! History, and add that to a vital role in the Duel Terminal 3 storyline, and you have an archetype that you definitely have to respect. Number 8, Infernity. Easily the most interesting archetype from the 5Ds era. Many love Infernity because of its fast and super aggressive playstyle. A deck that many thought would be held back by a huge archetype-specific restriction turned out to be no more than a minor inconvenience. On a side note, Infernity are not just one of the most combo-centric archetypes, but they're also one of the most entertaining to watch as they win and lose gloriously. Number 7, Prophecy. While maybe not the most entertaining of decks to play, the power of this archetype can never be questioned. When Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy was released and the Dragon Rules took over the game, Prophecy was one of the only decks that actually stood a legitimate chance. This was of course in large part due to its ultimate trump card, Spellbook of Judgment. Prophecy at its height was definitely one of the most powerful decks of all time. In addition, Prophecy also has collectively some of the best artworks around, with cards like Prophecy, Destroyer, and Temperance that showcase the newer dark Yu-Gi-Oh! Designs. Number 6, Windups. Now here's an archetype for all ages that everyone can love. As cute and colorful as they were explosive and impactful on the metagame, Windups were one of the Zeal era's best. Being designed around adorable toys meant that Windups would be easily favored by younger duelists, while being extremely powerful and having the ability to spam the field and loop cards for days out of their opponent's hand meant that they would be favored by everyone else. This is actually one of the few examples in Yu-Gi-Oh! Of an archetype that can captivate an audience of all ages. Number 5, Performa Pals. Ladies and gentlemen, here comes the fun part. Allow me to introduce you to the premier pendulum archetype in our game. Being the centerpiece of one of the strongest decks ever, Performa Pals have taken the pendulum mechanic to a whole nother level. Some might call the archetype circus and show focused artwork a little bit cheesy, but the amount of players who play the deck religiously is only surpassed by the magnificent performance that the archetype consistently puts on. Number 4, Nekroz. One of my personal favorites and a deck that is an absolute blast to play. Nekroz hit the game like a wrecking ball and made the ritual mechanic great again after an almost decade-long drought of irrelevance. Even more impressively, Nekroz are actually descendants of the Ice Barriers, so in a way, Ice Barriers sort of dominated the game. Symbolically anyways. Great lore, amazing artwork, reviving a dead mechanic. Nekroz pretty much have it all. Number 3, Monarchs. The GX era's finest is also one of the most beloved archetypes of all time. Monarchs are so high on this list because they are probably the only archetype in history to be tier 1 a full decade after being released. Monarchs have stayed faithful to their tribute mechanic roots, but they've also given us new glorious monsters that are made for today's metagame. Monarchs are also very similar to Blackwings and Heroes in the fact that even when not meta or viable, they still have an audience of fans that are devoted. Number 2, Dragon Rulers. There's actually a lot of debates whether this is a proper archetype or not, but what is not up for debate is how good this archetype was in its prime. The Dragon Rulers at their height were probably the most powerful deck ever created, and the collateral damage that they caused took years to repair. An archetype that was dominant as a pure deck was also equally influential as both an engine and when splashed into other archetypes such as Mermail and Volcanics. Dragon Rulers are literally potency personified. Honorable mentions include Ritual Beast, Evil Swarm, Cosmos, and Dracos, and finally to our number 1, Shadows. There are a lot of fantastic archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh, but outside of maybe Elemental Heroes, I can think of none finer than Shadows, the creme de la creme from the Duelist Alliance, as well as the main antagonist in the third major storyline in the Duel Terminals. Shadows single-handedly revived the fusion mechanic as well as gave us some of the most robust and beautiful artworks in the game, such as El Shadow, Winda, and Construct. Shadows have a huge following, including myself, and they are great on every single level imaginable. So let me know what you guys thought of this list. Were there any archetypes that you wished were on here? What's your favorite archetype? Leave that in the comment section below. Thank you for watching as always. Subscribing makes life happy.